Welcome back to the Zest. I'm so excited right now for our next guest. We have Rick Fernandes, who is a producer and award-winning director who serves as the executive director at the Fred Rogers Center. Yes, Mr. Rogers himself. And Fred Rogers is honestly one of my personal heroes, and he's often remembered for his kind words and saying, "You are special." And are those words the foundation for happiness? I'm so excited to introduce you to Rick Fernandes.
Oh,
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I know we've been chatting up a storm before all the cameras came on about Mr. Rogers and his legacy, and he has meant so much to me, so I'm excited to hear about the things that you guys are up to. So tell us a little bit about the Fred Rogers Center and the mission and some of the great things that is happening in your world.
We're attempting to do. So what we generally say is the Fred Rogers Center is about Fred Rogers, not as much about Mr. Rogers, because Mr. Rogers, people always think of the TV show. Fred Rogers, the man himself, was an amazing man. And what you see on camera is him, but there was a lot behind camera that he did to make sure he was talking to the audience in a proper, respectful way. What we focus on, our mission, actually came from Fred's wife, Joanne, who once challenged Fred, saying, well, Fred, what are you doing to help children grow to be competent, confident, and caring adults? And we're like, well, that was a good enough challenge for Fred. That's our challenge. So we focus on what can we do to help children be that way. And we focus primarily, and what was important to Fred was the relationship between adults and children. That is really critical, especially in early years. So our work, whether it's in digital media or in professional development, it's how do we improve the dynamic and the relationship between adults and children.
I love that. And someone who, I'm very involved in my local neighborhood, and the kids come over literally every single day after school, and it's like my neighbors joke that I have Camp Lindsey going on, like it's just a little thing that we have. And thinking back to the way that Mr. Rogers was and interacted with children, I often think about that and how I can use phrases and how I can talk about, because one of the things that I think was so brilliant is he was able to talk about real issues like divorce, things that weren't even
sort
discussed.
Of taboo on
taboo, and he made it in such a way where you felt at ease. And so how are you, this may be a big question, but how are you guys bridging that gap, or what are some of the things, the new things that you're doing to be able to have that communication between the child and the adult?
Well, so there's always a confusion, especially in the Pittsburgh area. There's the Fred Rogers Company, and there's the Fred Rogers Center. And we talk all the time, and we're best buddies. The Fred Rogers Company continues Fred's legacy of television shows. So they make television shows that,
like Daniel
Tiger's Neighborhood, Odd Squad, Peg Plus Cat, and they talk to children directly. So they'll tackle issues that way. The center works more on sort of the behind the scenes, where we work in orphanages as far away as in China, Pittsburgh Public Schools, Children's Hospital, and so adults who interact with children every day, we go in and we work with them and figure out how do we improve those interactions, those quality interactions, so the child sees the adult as someone important in their world. A big part of our work, though, and sort of to Fred's credit, is we don't criticize. We don't look for the wrong. It's so easy to say, this is wrong. You're doing this, this is just horrible. We go in and we say, what's going on that's right? And we find what's happening right, and we grow that. And what we've been seeing is, and that's been working once again from orphanages in China to Pittsburgh Public Schools, where we videotape teachers in their classroom. They have no idea what we're doing. We just sit in the back. We analyze the footage. We find an amazing moment of interaction. We share it with their peers, and what we find often is people don't realize that they were actually doing really good work. They're just so busy doing what they're doing that when it's highlighted to them, they don't see it initially. It's their peers that see it, and they love what they see, so they end up emulating it and doing more of it. So what we find is, instead of being negative, saying don't do that, we're more about keep doing that. And we find as they do more of the good, a lot of so-called the bad is going away.
Even in just what I do for a living with health coaching, one of the things that we always ask is what's going well. Because it's easy to say, oh, I didn't have my green smoothie this morning and I didn't eat this way, or I I really binged over the weekend or whatever, you're feeling bad. But if you focus like what's going well, actually, I drank water all weekend and I practiced, I had a gratitude practice or whatever it may be. So I think that's great.
It's positive reinforcement. Everyone wants to be complimented.
Absolutely.
And you feel good. So you realize, I think people are just so hard on themselves. They only see the negative. That when people highlight the good, they realize, wait a minute, I can do this.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of our work, and it really does benefit the child in the end.
Now tell us a little bit about the archive.
So the archive, we have over 16,000 objects from Fred. And what's critical about the archive is people are familiar with the show and the scripts, but what we actually get to see are all the little notes behind it, all his revisions, how he changed one word to another, which allows us to have insight to say, why did he choose that? Oh, this makes sense. Something we just embarked on is we had over 500 hours of recordings that Fred recorded his conversations with Dr. Margaret McFarland, who was his chief sort of child development expert. So he would go to her every week to talk about ideas for the show. So Dr. McFarland would be very specific and very clinical about here's how children think. Fred would take those complex theories, and in these tapes you hear their dialogue, and then we could go back to the show and see what he ended up with and trace through all the scripts.
That's awesome.
And see how do you take something complex and make it deep and simple. So we've, I think, gone through 70 hours of tapes, and it's just, we're now at a point where we know we found something amazing, and now we're like, now what do we do with it? We have some exciting ideas, but the archive is a great place to go and really get into Fred's thinking. Another example is he would change the color of his pen when he wanted to emphasize something. So we'd see something written in blue ink, and then all of a sudden a word would be in red. You'd be like, that's interesting. Why is he highlighting it? So all our work and all our initiatives now go back into the archive to help guide us to move forward.
That's amazing. I love just even the thinking process of that. So, and where's the archive located? So
the Fred Rogers Center is at St. Vincent College in Latrobe. I believe if you're in Latrobe, you say Latrobe. In Pittsburgh, it's Latrobe, Pennsylvania. So it's around 40 miles east of Pittsburgh. It's where our offices are located. It's a beautiful campus. And the archive is in our building. So I'm incredibly fortunate that every now and then I'll pick up the phone and call our archivist and say, did Fred ever have any comment about this topic? And Emily, our archivist, will find something amazing.
That's amazing. I love it. And I've actually, as big of a Mr. Rogers and Fred Rogers fan that I've been over the years, I've never been to the archive, so I can't wait to.
Oh, definitely come out. We'd love to have you.
Hopefully check it out. Awesome. Well, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much for sharing today. I'm thrilled to have you, and I can't wait to come check out the archive. And you can learn more about the Fred Rogers Center at fredrogerscenter.org. And next up on the Zest, we'll hear from the incredible young woman and her path to addiction recovery. So stay tuned.